Hello, I'm Paul Perrello, and welcome to the Philly Factor. Today we're going to have a lot of fun on our show. We're going to travel to a galaxy far, far away. How many times have you heard that, right? Yeah, not that far away. Maybe it's the attic, maybe it's even in the basement. You know where those large plastic containers are stored there off on the side? Yeah, open up those containers, and what's inside? Well, maybe it's some of your childhood memories. Dig deep inside. Can you find that Obi-Wan Kenobi figure? How about that C-3PO? Maybe it's your lightsaber from Star Wars that is tucked away in the basement or the attic. Well, you say it still works. Did you know that there might be some value in that Star Wars collectible? You say your parents, you know where I'm going with this, they tossed all that stuff when you went to college, you moved out? Yeah, it all went in the trash. Yeah, it sounds familiar, doesn't it? Well, when Star Wars first debuted in the 1970s, it not only transported us to a faraway galaxy, but it gave way to an extensive product line that continues to this very day. To help us understand the Star Wars collector's megamania is Paul Harrison. Paul is the co-owner of JediTempleArchives.com, a popular Star Wars collecting website. Paul has been collecting since 1979. He co-authored Star Wars, the Ultimate Action Figure Collection, with the world's largest Star Wars collector, Stephen Sansweet, who's a Philly native. Paul is currently working on a second book, The Saga Museum, fresh from the Toy Fair in New York. Paul joins us here on the Philly Factor to talk about his hobby, make that his passion probably, on how to collect Star Wars toys and memorabilia, and what to collect, why to collect. And Paul, welcome to our program.
Thank you for having me.
Before we begin, I want to show this book. I mean, and this is an example of his first book with Stephen Sansweet. And there is probably everything in here about Star Wars collecting that you probably didn't even know existed, unless maybe if you share that same passion with Paul. So let me ask, how did you get involved in this?
The Star Wars hobby itself, since the beginning.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I will never forget, and it was a kindergarten in 1979, and my my classmate, Vito Ferrante, brought in a little Luke Skywalker X-Wing action figure, and I was just enamored of it. Mm-hmm. I wanted one, and I knew I had to have it. And that summer, my parents got me a whole bunch for my birthday, and have been an avid collector ever since.
What's remarkable is you still remember that classmate's name.
Oh, yeah.
Are you still in touch with him?
Yeah,
or?
Facebook and stuff.
Yeah. Facebook, I think it's a passing trend. That's just my opinion. Only kidding. Yeah. So here you are as a little kid. Classmate shows you this toy, and the rest they say is history.
I didn't even see the movie in 1970.
You did not even
see the movie.
You really didn't even know what Star Wars was
about. Just totally starstruck with the figures.
Yeah. And so now here we are, 2016. How many items are in your collection?
Easily 4,000.
4,000.
Yeah.
And so
we're talking like 30 years of collecting now.
Sure. Now you didn't start this
not
like
in one
yesterday.
fell swoop.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So where does one put 4,000 collectibles?
Lots of totes, lots of bins. That's the problem with collecting for so long, that the hobby has overtaken the passion a little bit.
Sure.
And space always becomes an issue, and when you start becoming interested in other licenses who make larger and bigger things like 12-inch figures and life-size heads, busts of Star Wars characters, the room just disappears. So unfortunately, a lot has to go in the attic, go in the basement, but sometimes you thin down your collection by throwing a couple on eBay.
Yeah.
So it's a maintenance thing that you have to keep up with.
You've brought some of the items with us, which we'll go through here as we progress through the show. But when you talk about the number of licensees now, not only has the franchise grown in terms of the number of movies, but what was it? Just a few licensees in the very beginning. I know you mentioned. I read somewhere that it was a Kenner action figure that was probably that first collectible that you got.
Yeah, there were actually quite a few licensees back in the day, but I mean nowhere near like it is today.
Yeah.
But Kenner was a small toy company back in the 70s, and they signed the deal with Lucasfilm, and they had their name on the products up through about 2000, and then Hasbro bought them out completely, and then you just started seeing Hasbro on
Right.
on the product packaging.
So Kenner, as a toy company, has gone away then?
Yeah.
So everything's Hasbro. And then, of course, now we have the, Disney acquiring, Lucasfilm. So the toys and the items that are coming out now, do they have the, is it Hasbro still manufacturing these toys?
It is. It says Hasbro right now, and you'll see the Disney logo right to next to it.
Yeah.
I think if you look at this figure right here, you'll say Disney and Hasbro.
Yeah, we can show this. I'll hold this right up here on the back of the box. Actually, in the front of the box, too. Right there, it says Disney and Hasbro. And while I'm holding this up, this is Rey, who is from the latest Star Wars movie, right?
She's the main star of the show.
Yeah. Hopefully, we didn't spoil it for anybody at this point.
They should have seen the film by now.
You think? Yeah. I told you before we even started that, now, I must admit that I just saw, that's my first Star Wars movie is this one. I still have to catch up on the other six.
That's terrible.
I'm sorry. So please don't hold it against me. But hey, and my wife is convinced because Disney, people that know me know that I'm a big Disney fan, they're convinced that because Disney bought Lucasfilms, that's the only reason why I got interested in Star Wars all of a sudden. But yeah, Rey is the main character. Way back in the day, it was
Luke Skywalker,
Princess
Princess Leia, Han Solo.
Yeah. So those items then that one might find, let's say you go to a Goodwill store or you go to a flea market and you're rummaging through the toy bin or whatever and you find one of those early figures, what might they be worth today?
That's a loaded question because it depends on condition, the tightness of the joints, whether the sun has aged them or not.
Right.
So paint wear, there's so many factors involved, whether it's on the card, whether it's loose. There's action figures that go for tens of thousands of dollars carded, but loose they can only go for 25.
Really?
So there's a vast disparity in how you would rate or pay, determine how something is worth.
Yeah. So what is it that causes people like yourself to collect Star Wars memorabilia? I mean, what?
As an adult?
Yeah, as an adult, yeah, I guess, yeah.
For me, it's a very, I hate to use the word emotional, but passionate thing. The 80s were the best time of my life growing up. I have the fondest memories of my parents during that, my friends, my siblings, and I think, you attach things like that to your collecting, and finding the balance is the key. Where it doesn't become an obsession or an addiction, but it's finding enjoyment while recollecting those fond memories. So, for me, I could still watch the old films over and over and over and never get tired of them because I just remember those wonderful times, and no one can take that away from me. It's just permanently in my mind.
Sure, yeah. So, any estimate how many Star Wars collectibles fans are out there today in this galaxy?
It's too hard to approximate. I've heard claims of, hardcore collectors I'm talking about, not Star Wars fans. There's millions of Star Wars fans.
Sure.
But the actual hardcore collectors, I've heard numbers as low as 10,000. I've heard numbers as high as 100,000. So, I mean, there's a lot of, leeway in there.
So you mentioned hardcore fans. So what separates, pardon the pun, the men from the boys or the women from the girls? I mean, what makes, there may be somebody that goes to Toys R Us and they're picking out a kid's gift for a birthday party or whatever. Chances are they're just going there to buy it for the sake of a gift.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's what happens, whether that is taken out of the box. Many of the items that you've brought here are still in the box. So what separates the men from the boys?
I think a better way of answering that would be to describe that there's so many different subsets of collectors out there.
Okay.
There's people, Hasbro has, created a new scale of figures recently since 2013. They call it the Black Series line. When their standard has always been 3 3/4 inch. These are 6-inch figures.
Right.
So they developed a whole new following with the 6-inch line that many of the 3 3/4 inch collectors no longer want to carry. No longer want to be, they're not buying this line.
Sure. Yeah.
So. Instead of everyone collecting 3 3/4 inch figures and the corresponding vehicles and the play sets, people are cherry picking what they want to collect.
Right.
So.
Well, then let me ask this: for the person like myself who just saw the movie, and if I'm interested in collecting, look, I would like to go back 30 years and and get that you know, small, you know, Luke Skywalker figure if I could find it. But if I wanted to start a collection then, should I be looking at the new merchandise that's out there, like you mentioned some of the products that you brought along? I mean,
Well, you may be asking the wrong person because I'm very fond of the older stuff.
Sure.
I'm not even talking about just the stuff in the 70s and 80s, but I'm talking about what collectors refer to as the golden era of collecting. That was 2006 through 2012.
okay.
Hasbro really amped up their articulation in the figures. The sculpts were phenomenal. The paint jobs were borderline flawless. And their prices were very reasonable. And I'm talking about like a figure with, you know, if you counted every direction the joints went, we're talking like 27 points of articulation.
Wow.
For $7.99. Now you get, where's the Han Solo? Now you get a 5-point articulation figure for $7.99. So this is what you would find in the store today.
Right, right.
So for the hardcore collectors, the men and women that have been collecting since the 70s and 80s, we look at this and we're like, okay, it's cool, but where's the articulation? Like, where's the quality? Where's the, you know?
Right.
So we see for the most part, we see a downgrade in what's being made today, and so it's a little bit of a disappointment for us.
So is there a science behind collecting then? Because see, I would just go into a store, and whether it's the Disney store that has a whole product line, or Toys R Us, or even into a collector's store, and there are many of them in the Philadelphia area. I'd say, gee, I like that. I just like it. I don't know. It may not have 27 points of articulation, but I just like the way it looks.
And if that's what grabs you, I think you should go for it. I mean, why I have the opinion that 27 points of articulation is the best, because I saw what Hasbro could do, and I was collecting then. But someone who just comes into it, they're going to see the Han Solo of, oh, this is a pretty good likeness of him, and it is.
Yeah.
But again, like, they're not going to care about articulation like I would.
Right.
So
yeah.
I think that, you know, what's being made today, Hasbro is going to find another audience, and you know, Hasbro wants a whole new generation of Star Wars collectors. They want the young kids involved, and you know, they're buying it. They're interested. So you can't fault them for that.
We're talking with Paul Harrison, who is co-owner of Jedi Temple Archives.com.
That's correct.
So, given the fact that you had this passion for Star Wars collecting, is that what created or caused the website?
Interestingly enough, I mentioned that golden era, 2006 to 2012, and in 2008, Hasbro released a character called an Ugnaught, and if you watch The Empire Strikes Back, that was one of the mine workers who froze Han Solo in carbonite, and it was such a tremendous upgrade from the same character they made in the late 90s with enhanced articulation, a dynamic sculpt, incredible accessories to interact with the figure, and I was so taken back by that I just felt that I wanted to write about it. I was so blown away by what they had done, and it was perfect timing. Jedi Temple Archives was hiring, and I showed interest, and I've been there since November 2008. So
wow, and we should mention that this is sort of your sideline. It's not your real job.
That's correct.
Although sometimes, you know, a hobby and a passion can be very time-consuming, but he does have a real job outside of the Star Wars galaxy. But the website again, and really check it out. I've been there, and that's actually how I found Paul. It's JediTempleArchives.com, and if there is anything and everything you want to know, believe me, it's there. And I guess that's also what brought you and Steve Sansweet together. Steve, you know, I tell the story to students about, you know, it's so important being at the right place at the right time and seizing the moment, or just, you know, having to step in it. Steve saw the website?
Yeah, well, he was working on this book, unbeknownst to me, and he was Googling images of characters for photography, and our website name kept coming up, and at the same time, one of the other co-authors, Dan Curto, who's a good friend of mine, he was working at rebelscum.com at the time, and Steve and him were talking, and they kept mentioning my photos coming up on Google, and Dan goes, oh, I know him, and then so Dan reached out to me, and then all three of us connected, and that's how we got on board.
See, It's always about who you know, not necessarily what you know, although in this case, your knowledge of Star Wars collectibles really caused this, all the planets to align. I keep coming up with these space analogies. You have to forgive me. You also brought some of those items there on the side. If you want to just hold them up and we
Sure.
can talk about, this is a stormtrooper?
This is a snowtrooper, but back in the day,
snowtrooper.
but back in the day
Yeah,
he
I'm
was
still
called.
learning.
Yeah, back in the day he was called Imperial Stormtrooper Hoth Battle Gear.
Okay.
And the reason why this is so big is because this is from a different licensee called Gentle Giant Limited, and they have made what this is called the Jumbo Vintage Kenner figure line. And they're basically 1/6 scale versions of the original 1979 and 80 action figures that were made by Kenner.
Okay.
And it's mock packaging, which imitates the original packaging of the day. But collectors like me have eaten this up because we get giant versions of the action figures we had as kids.
Sure, yeah. And so if a person wants to collect, would you recommend that they would collect everything in this version or in this size, or is it okay to have the smaller size, the medium size, those type of things, or stick with one thing?
You have to find your own passion. Whatever grabs you, I encourage going with.
Yeah.
There's a lot of lines out there that I don't care for that people adore, and that's wonderful. That there's an audience for that. So, on our site we review everything. So people have bought 12-inch figures that they never would have considered were it not for my review. So you just have to give everything a chance and see what grabs you.
Have you? I suspect you have probably seen some items and didn't favorably review them because you just personally or professionally didn't think they paid homage to the overall Star Wars franchise?
Yeah, sometimes a figure has horrific articulation or a really bad paint job, or the likeness does not look like the character at all.
Sure.
And I'm open and honest about whether that's true or not, and I let people know. So.
Yeah. Have you ever had anybody go in and retool the product because of a review that maybe you or a co-owner on the website put out there? Or they probably wouldn't even admit it.
Maybe I don't know how to answer that, but I mean, we have had sculptors from Sideshow Collectibles comment in our posts. We've had people from Hasbro comment in our comments, in reviews and stuff. So I know they're reading. Whether I've had any influence or not, I don't know, but they're definitely reading.
A lot of times people will jump on the bandwagon and start collecting because that's what everybody's doing.
The Johnny-come-latelys.
Then there are those people that will get involved in collecting because they perhaps see the profit in collecting. And with websites like eBay, and there are so many other, Craigslist, you can find, somebody selling their entire Star Wars collection for whatever. But I mean, is that a dangerous thing? Would you recommend, I mean, you said before, collect what you really like or what, what really appeals to you. But sometimes people are thinking, I'm going to go out to the store now and I'm going to go and buy a dozen of these because I know 2 years from now they're going to triple in price.
Well, that's that's not the way I do things.
Sure.
Anything's possible. Anything could go up in value. Things plummet in value. The figures from 1995 through 2000 are a dime a dozen. People can't give them away. So I think in later years, like that golden era, production numbers were significantly lower than they were in the mid to late 90s and early 2000s. And you do see premiums. You especially see premiums for this line. And again, this is a modern figure in retro packaging. Collectors my age eat this up. Some of these figures that were just released a couple of years ago go for 40, 50, 60, 70, upwards of $100 and $150. This one in particular is an error figure. This is from Canada, and this is a prequel trilogy Yoda on a original trilogy card back. Okay. And Hasbro, for the American audience, was able to correct the card back art and fix the Yoda packaging. So this one goes for a little bit more on eBay now.
You also brought C-3PO along with you, did you not?
Yeah. I did, yeah.
And just the box alone, I mean, when you look at the artwork that goes into the box, yeah.
Yeah, this is Sideshow Collectibles 1/6 scale C3PO figure. And I'm not sure if you can see him through the package or not, but I'll take him out.
He's leaning to the side.
Is he?
Yeah.
The inner packaging's missing.
Wow.
And he is just absolutely gorgeous. Loaded with articulation. His eyes are lit up.
Okay, yeah.
And I'm a huge fan of Sideshow Collectibles 1/6 scale line, and this is one of my favorite pieces they've done yet.
And it's truly remarkable. It looks like he's really going to walk right across the table.
I know, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's remarkable how every detail that you would expect if he were to walk into the studio doors, what you would come to expect is put into that. Yeah. So with an item like this, you mentioned Sideshow Collectibles, right? Yeah. Chances are that this is going to be, the price point of this is going to be a little bit different than going into Toys R Us and finding a smaller figure.
Yeah, absolutely. This is what we call a high-end collectible, and this goes upwards of $200.
Really?
Yeah. But they make flawless pieces.
Sure.
I mean, they're just absolutely gorgeous.
You mentioned packaging, and you said that the inner packaging in this box isn't there, but I've heard from collectors saying, oh, make sure you keep the box and make sure, I mean, a lot of people are torn. It's great to go out and get something at the store, but if you're not taking it out of the box to play with it, then really what's the value of it?
Well, I guess, if you're collecting them in package, that's your value.
Right.
For me, I mean, I'm a loose collector. I have them all in baggies. I have them loose like this. I had to actually rummage through my house looking for packaged examples to bring here, just so they looked a little bit nicer in the presentation.
Yeah.
But I open everything.
Yeah, yeah. But does it diminish the retail value of it if you want? I mean, if you so desire to sell it.
If you worry about such things, I guess it would. Again, I don't worry about such things, so I don't pay attention to that.
I also hear people that buy two because they want one for themselves and they want to hold on to the other one for retail value at some point down the line.
Yeah, that's true. And some people just like two for one open and one packaged.
Yeah, yeah.
I've been guilty of that a couple times too.
In the few minutes that we have left here, and we could go on for an hour. I'm so intrigued with this. Is there an item out there, and I'm sure, was there something out there that you wish you had in your collection? I said at the beginning of the program about those things that get discarded in the trash. You move out and mom and dad decide we're cleaning out the room. I mean, are there those items out there that you wish you had for whatever reason, but you don't have?
Yeah, I have a really good example actually. In the early 90s, let me back up a little bit. In 1985, Hasbro released a line called Kenner release. It was Kenner back then. Right. It was called the Power of the Force line, and all the figures came with coins. And there was about a dozen and a half figures released to stores. The line was canceled. They were only on shelf for about 6 weeks, and you had to get the rest of the coins through a mail-away offer. Mm-hmm. Well, during college, I managed to collect them all and have them professionally mounted. Mm-hmm. And when I was away, they were stolen from the store, and it really upset me as a hardcore collector, and I never. Went back and tried to collect them all, and now they're just almost unattainable. Wow. Some of the coins go for $1,500 a piece. So.
Beware of a box that says limited edition, because you can put any label on any type of box, but if it's a limited edition run, is it really limited edition? Or if it says limited edition to 1,000, then is there really only 1,000?
Oh, that would be true. Yeah,
that would be.
They can't falsely advertise that, but there's been figures released to Target during the Revenge of the Sith era, 2005, that said 25,000 limited edition. I mean, yeah, okay, it's limited to 25,000, but that's a huge number.
Sure, yeah. So if you find something that's limited edition, so if they say 1,000 only manufactured, then it's 1,000, and you might want to jump on that.
Providing that there's 1,000 people who want it, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it could be a bomb and no one wants it, and what good is 1,000?
Yeah, sometimes, some people will also say, well, but 10 years from now, because it was a bomb, it could very well be a success. I mean, you could drive yourself crazy. Yeah. Needless to say, I'm not telling you that you probably don't already know about.
That's why you have to have that innate passion and enjoyment of the hobby and find what you like and collect it.
You just recently came back from Toy Fair 2016.
I did.
So what might we see coming up this year in the Star Wars Galaxy?
Well, they announced, Hasbro announced a couple of new 6-inch figures for the Black Series line, which look fantastic. They have an AT-AT driver coming, a snowtrooper in the scale, and a couple more. And even though the reveals were smaller this year, they promised a lot of good things are happening for this year. So we'll probably get more announcements during Comic-Con and stuff like that. So I'm looking forward to what they have to offer.
And of course, there's you've brought the action figures here, but there's a whole other world out there of vehicles that you did not bring. But you know, people that they collect action figures, are they also collecting the vehicles?
Action figures are definitely the biggest group of collectors. Vehicles, if they're done right, man, people go crazy over them too. They in the vintage packaging, which is like this. Oops, things are falling all over. They did the Millennium Falcon in the vintage collection packaging, and man, that just goes for crazy money. That was a Toys R Us exclusive in 2012, and it just sold out like mad.
Well, we've just scratched the surface. I want to thank Paul Harrison for being with us here on the program. We covered a lot of territory in a short period of time. JediTempleArchives.com. That's where you can go and find more information. Of course, if you are a diehard Star Wars fan, the Ultimate Action Figure Collection is co-authored by Paul. You can find this in bookstores, online.
It's a #1 on Amazon.com.
#1 on Amazon.com. Paul, thanks so much for being with us. I'm glad you gave us a tour of the galaxy here and shed some great information about collecting Star Wars.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Till the next time, thanks so much for watching us here on the Philly Factor. My name is Paul Perrello, and we'll see you again on our program.